Well, hi there. Welcome to Bella's Vistas. Thanks for coming back. Well, I wanted to do a video today and talk about the settings that I've been using with my Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II. It's only the Mark II, but it's working very well for me with these settings that I put in. And what I do, I mostly shoot in manual mode with a single spot focus in the middle. I'm using manual exposure, but automatic ISO. So my exposures usually are pretty good. I can use up and down by just switching to mode 2 on the button. Then I can adjust my exposure up and down by 1/3 stop increments and make sure I'm getting the exposures right. But it's worked very well for me. Now, then I have control of my exposure, so I know if I need more depth of field, I go to a higher f-stop, and if I need more motion stopping, I go to a higher shutter speed, and that way I can get pretty good images most of the time. That's when I'm prepared. I'm walking around with the camera in manual. Say I'm driving along in the car and I see a bird flying by up in the sky. Well, I have my C1 setting. Get it? C1. I see one bird up in the sky, so I put it on C1. That helps me remember. Now I'm using autofocus and back of the camera and adjust to 3x3 or down to the 5 spot where I just have the center point surrounded by 4 other spots for focus. Using continuous focus, that seems to work pretty good for me. Then I have C2 when I see a bird maybe sitting on the ground. I have that programmed to give me that kind of a shot. And then finally, I've got C3 when I see a bird in a tree. Get it? C3 tree. I figure maybe that bird is going to take off, so I want to be set in pro capture. And that's the way I've been doing it. So there are a bunch of settings on the back of the camera as well for focus, so that you make sure that it doesn't trip the shutter until your subject is in focus. And I'm going to go over those and show you where they are on the back of the camera. So I'm just hoping that some of these tricks that I have, because the memory tricks, I'm 70 plus, so my memory's not all that great. So if I go to C1, that's because I see one bird, and C2, well, that's just in between, and C3, that's when the bird is in the tree and I want to get him taken off. And that'll usually work pretty well for me with Pro Capture. So I'll show you those settings now. Thanks. Well, we want to get the camera set up before we go out in the field because the menus are a little tricky to work with. So we'll go here and we'll start out in the little gear menu, which will come right down here to the gear. Then we go over here into A1. We go down to AF scanner and we set AF scanner to mode 3. Because if the subject appears unclear, if the contrast is low, the scanner will still be activated. So it's going to keep scanning. It won't start shooting without having sharp pictures for you. So that's good. We're going to set that there. We're going to say OK. Now we're going to set our CAF sensitivity at +2 right there. So we're going to say OK for that. And that's good. So that's about basically what we have to do there. Then, like I said, usually I work in M. I work in manual mode with 1/60th of a second, about f8, and I can adjust that if I need a higher shutter speed to stop action, or if I need a tighter f-stop to give me a little more depth of field. This lens, this is the 300mm with the 2x adapter, the MC20, so about f11. You don't want to go much lower than f11. And in Pro Capture, you'll only be able to work at f8. So, but that's our manual mode, and the focus is single autofocus. If you want to switch to manual focus, you can just pull back there. And I found on some shots where it might be a tiny bird in the middle of a field a long ways away, it's better to go to manual focus and focus in on the bird. It's a little tricky. You want to brace against something because it's going to be zoomed in. Okay, so now there's my C1 setting, which is that's for a bird like just flying by. So that's preset at 12/50th of a second at f11, and my focus is continual autofocus tracking at 5x5. But I can just push this button here and I can switch down to 3x3, or I can switch down to the 5 center with 4 surrounding pins. or a single, but usually I'm finding the 3x3 works pretty good for this. Then I go to C2. There I've got a 2/50th at f11, and sometimes I'll just crank my speed up there as need be. But when I go into C3, that's when I'm getting Pro Capture. There I'm at a 1/1600th of a second at f8, automatic ISO. I'm using Pro Capture. I can switch down to 3x3 or the center and 4 surrounding to the 5. So that's pretty well how I've got it set. So I'll usually be walking around setting M1, but should I see a bird flying in the sky, I'll just go to C1, and a bird sitting in the field, I'll go to C2. That gives me a slower shutter speed and a little tighter f-stop, but Pro Capture is at a 1/1600th at f8, and I've got some wonderful shots with Pro Capture. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this might help you a little bit. Thanks for visiting Bella's Vistas. Come on back again real soon.